Welcome to Bed Crime Stories Podcast. I'm your host, T, and if true crime is your jam and like me, you enjoy delving into unsolved cases, trying to figure out who done it, please consider subscribing. Also, if you enjoy my videos, please hit that like button. You're now hearing from friends and or acquaintances of the Rounds family. No Thanks Investigates had two ladies on last night who know the Rounds. Both were described as friends of the family. One was a lady who just happened to call in. Another was a female truck driver named Trish Branchot, who worked with Candace in the past and who allegedly contacted Jim Terry via text messages to rip on Candace Cooley about financial dealings. The First Lady came on to say that the Rounds are very nice people and to support the descriptions we've heard of Dylan as being hyper-focused on farming and being a very industrious young man. She said things like, "And good for Dylan for going out there to follow his dream," even though the 19-year-old, we now know, was swimming in a sea of dangerous and violent convicted felons out there in Lucerne and Montello, unbeknownst to pretty much everyone. But Terry wasn't having these strictly positive descriptions of Dylan's family from this lady, and he thought she was planted there by the Round to undermine his claims. Terry even called her an effin' biatch at one point. It was bad. The other lady who came on Doug's live later was a truck driver named Trish Branchot, who's been texting with Jim Terry for the past 3 weeks. When she failed to say all the salacious things about Candace's business dealings and about Candace's relationship with Dylan that she'd previously told Terry, he went ballistic. Note that Terry did show the text messages to prove that this lady had indeed bashed Candace about financial stuff in her earlier communications. Terry felt that Dylan's family must have gotten to her before the live to tell her to shut up. As Terry spoke to both women, he was like a non-stop barking chihuahua. Nothing against chihuahuas. He was high-pitched and incessant. He wouldn't stay quiet long enough to let them speak. It was pure misery to listen to. Terry's clearly angry that these family contacts are only saying nice things about Dylan's parents instead of verifying the dark accusations that at least this Trish person told him in private and that he's allegedly dug up himself about Candace and Justin. But it does seem to me that instead of trying to figure out what happened to Dylan on May 28th, Terry appears more bent on vindicating himself from claims that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Cooley and Dylan's friend in Montello, Kurt Wadsworth, and Kurt's brother Troy are all saying that Jim Terry doesn't know squat. So, what are those dark claims, and are they even relevant to the case? Well, Terry is accusing Cooley of being deeply in debt to the tune of $1 million. Some are taking this to mean that Cooley would have had motive to steal money from her son. Personally, I think that's highly doubtful. Terry told the First Lady on the live that he heard from both a friend of Dylan's and a coach at Dylan's school that his dad, Justin, once tried to choke him with a shower curtain for taking too long in the shower. He made it sound like Dylan was subjected to this stuff more than once, and that Dylan may have been the only Rounds child who was subjected to such treatment, implying that Justin was perhaps punishing Dylan for being gay. But let me caution you and me, we've seen no actual proof of Dylan's interest in men, or that his parents had any inklings about that, or if they believed it, or that it was true. Terry also said that Justin once tried to run over his then wife Candace with his car. Once again, that's an allegation. The lady on the live said she didn't know about any of this stuff, and that if she had, especially the part about the shower curtain, she would have reported it to the authorities. Terry was mad that she was saying what a lovely family the Rounds are, and she doesn't know what actually went down behind closed doors. He was expressing frustration that these people are only looking at the rounds from a very superficial view, from just the facade, the public facing Candace Cooley and Justin Round, and that they rely on the superficial to come to the conclusion that Dylan's parents are good people. Terry's also miffed that they show up on live panels to support Dylan's parents when he thinks they don't have a clue as to what Dylan's home life was really like. The second lady, the trucker, Trish Branchot, I like saying that name, can you tell? Talked about having trouble getting paid in a timely manner by Candace, and about maybe once being stiffed by her for a load of cargo she trucked. Trish also stated that when Candace got into a position of power in a trucking company, she drastically cut the rates that truckers would receive for carrying load. Per Trish, a lot of people didn't want to work for her at that point. Trish paints an overall picture of Candace as being a tough cookie who can hold her own in the mostly male trucking industry, and she said Dylan is a lot like his mother. Trish apparently also told Jim Terry earlier in their text exchanges that to get to where Candace got in the business, a female has to sleep her way to the top, but she avoided talking about that on Doug's Live. After being prompted by Jim Terry, Trish then told a story about showing up one time to collect a job application from Candace and stumbling upon the aftermath of an altercation between Candace and Dylan. The trucker, however, denied seeing any fists flying firsthand, but Terry said that she'd previously told him via text that this incident happened during a party and that Dylan punched Candace. Trish's explanation for Dylan's aggression toward his mother was that he was at an age where he was acting out and only thinking about what his wants are, and he wasn't understanding that his mother was having to balance the needs of her 3 children, her husband, and a demanding job. Terry was livid that Trish wasn't expressing what she previously told him in those text messages, and that she wasn't showing pictures that she'd also shown him. I believe this incident likely happened, by the way, that Dylan probably did maybe lay a fist on his mother, and I can believe that Candace was dealing with a lot and that she was having trouble handling her son, who'd grown up to tower over her short stature and who was perhaps feeling his oats at that time in life. We've heard from Candace and Kurt Wadsworth that Dylan was headstrong, and Kurt has said several times that Dylan would never back down from a fight, that if someone tried to rob him, he'd fight back. But Trish also said the Rounds kids were always well cared for by their parents, and she didn't seem to know about any of this dark stuff that Jim Terry alleged about Dylan's father, Justin. Trish mentioned a custom truck that Candace Cooley had built in 2016, a rig that won Best of Show limited mileage Bobcat at the 2016 Great American Trucking Show. You can see it on the overdriveonline.com website and in this video. It looks like a very pricey truck. And Trish said that Dylan once asked her, "Why does my mom need a truck like that?" It sounds like Candace never drove trucks, but rather was more like the dispatcher or the business owner. So those are the dark stories about the family. If they're true, they would offer another answer to the question many have been asking, which is why would a 19-year-old want to live alone out in the remote desert in Lucin, Utah? Terry said he thinks Dylan was desperate to get away from his parents. He also stated that Dylan's grandparents may have purchased the farm for him to help him escape all this familial misery. And I will admit that I've considered whether Dylan went out to Lucin in part to hide his alleged homosexuality from his family, if that's true. That's just me speculating, though. Don't run with that. According to Terry, Dylan's grandparents purchased the land for Dylan without first talking to Justin and Candace and getting their approval. I'm not sure how old Dylan was when the land was purchased. It's sounding more and more like he was maybe 18, and maybe they felt they didn't need to get his parents' approval. Some people are asking why the grandparents didn't Google the names of people like Jim Brenner to try and make sure that young Dylan would be safe around these people in that remote desert setting. I think it's a valid question, but maybe the grandparents come from an era when you don't Google people. They don't know about that. I'm not sharing this to bash Dylan's grandparents. I think they genuinely wanted to help Dylan. They saw his immense potential and drive, and the inexpensive land in Lucin afforded them the opportunity to push Dylan toward his dream of being a farmer with his own farm where he could tend his own crops. Now, I want to circle back to Trish for a second because she told two additional stories. Neither one of them really related to Dylan or his parents per se, but that make it clear why she wants the FBI to expand their search area for Dylan. She brought up a body that was found in the Utah desert on June 23rd of 2022, so just about a month ago and a month after Dylan's disappearance. That body was found on the day the FBI got involved in Dylan's search. After hearing about the body but not seeing any news of it, Trish called a coroner friend of hers to ask about it. She said she was relieved when the coroner told her the body was a female. She didn't say anything about how or why this female died. Personally, I'm finding it very disturbing that this body was found out in the desert near where Dylan was living, and that there are at least two other men who've disappeared in and around Utah in 2022. We have 19-year-old Aiden Clune, who disappeared on April 27th near Curry, Nevada. He's said to have abandoned his truck on US 93 and proceeded into the high desert. The Elko County Sheriff's Office believes Aiden's disappearance is due to a mental health crisis. And then there's a 29-year-old Casey Bachslag, disappeared on June 6 from Salt Lake City. His parents reported him missing 2 days later, and his car was found that night on the I-80 near the Utah-Wyoming border. Bachslad bought a gun before he vanished and withdrew $100 from an ATM, so his disappearance may also stem from mental health issues. It's likely these cases are unrelated, but I'm just saying it's notable that so many people have gone missing in a relatively short period of time in and around Utah. Trish the trucker also shared a horrifying detail about her own life. It seems her brother was abducted when he was 16 and was held captive by a man who had other hostages too, many of whom he later did in. Trish says her brother was confined with chains in a crawl space and forced into certain acts for 2.5 years. Miraculously, he was released at the age of 18 when he was dropped off in New York wearing sandals with $10 in his pocket. Trish said that most of the other young boys were done in by this monster. She cited the name of the notorious serial killer, John Wayne Gacy. He's the guy who liked to dress up like a clown, but I think she was saying that her brother's captor was like Gacy, not that he was Gacy. I'm not sure where Trish's brother was held captive, but she's in Utah. Gacy committed crimes in Illinois in the 1970s. Trish then said that she's very concerned that Dylan might be in a similar situation, and she's desperate for law enforcement to expand their search for Dylan. and she cautioned that whoever goes out to those remote desert areas better be well armed and ready because they might come across someone who's hard to go up against, someone like the guy who held her brother captive. Okay, well, that's it for what went down in Doug's 4 hour live. I'll be back with details from another 4 hour conversation, this time from YouTuber Salty Pancakes and a discussion he had with Kurt Wadsworth. I'm eager to share additional information with you and some details that have been misreported about the case. Keep an eye out for that one. Until the next time on Bed Crime Stories. Now, please smash that like button.